the tool to foster individual and community development. The lack of access to resource and opportunity for sports enthusiasts and individuals in the country like India made this inspiring leader come out her way to start the fight towards bringing sustainability in sports by making a positive impact through her amazing work. Hey everyone, this is Nupur. Welcome to the first podcast episode of Ignited Spirits Presents Leadership Series. I'm extremely overwhelmed to have this conversation with this dynamic personality today. She is a sports sociopreneur, chartered accountant, and international rifle shooter, Shiv Chhatrapati Awardee, McKinsey's Next Generation Women's Leader, a TEDx speaker, a consultant by profession. Well, the list goes on and on. Enthusiasm, passion, humbleness, and curiosity to learn and grow makes her a true leader and inspiration for others. Bringing to you Priya Kaney's story, The Journey of Leadership. Let's begin. Hey Priyal, it's an absolute pleasure to have you today at our very first podcast episode on Leadership Series.
Thank you so much, Nupur, for inviting me, and I'm really looking forward for a very interactive and fun session.
It's my pleasure. Personally, I'm a big admirer of your amazing work and your personality, and I'm really excited to know about your journey. And right now, I'm in a serious dilemma, where exactly to start with, because you have done so many things till now in every phase of your career, putting the leadership mark in everything you do, and that's so beautiful.
Thank you so much, and it's really it's been an interesting journey so far, and I feel now that I look back to the last 10 years of my life, it's just been that passion to keep trying something new, to keep testing myself, putting myself out there beyond my comfort zone, and making the most of my opportunities is something that has played the trick in helping me achieve so much.
That's great. So let's start with your journey of beginning of the Play and Shine Foundation, like how you came up with this idea and what made you start this particular initiative and climb up with being one of the sports sociopreneur.
So I think Play and Shine started because of a lot of things coming together probably beautifully at the same time. As a sports person, I was in the rifle shooting for more than 13 years, and the kind of exposure I got through this journey of being a member of the Indian shooting team for 7 years was simply amazing. Got to travel the world far and wide, attend a lot of training camps, meet a lot of person not only within India but even outside India from the sports fraternity, and it was an experience that taught me the transformative power sport has, because when you're on the sports field, it's a very different version of you. And the sports field creates a kind of a conducive environment that tells you that no matter what background, what disability or what sex one belongs to, everyone is equal. And what just matters is what you bring to the team and the game. And I felt that, this could be used as a medium to kind of dissolve so many regional, communal and social disparities that are so highly prevalent in our country. So that was a realization that had dawned upon me when I was probably in the middle of my career as a rifle shooter. And then again, during school and college, I was involved as a volunteer with several NGOs working for the upliftment of underprivileged children. An experience that again taught me the little effort that is taken to ensure the overall holistic development, because so much of emphasis is just placed on teaching them math or English, or not much focus or not much effort is taken towards teaching them a language or any life skill or anything else that is not taught within the four walls of the classroom. So I felt that probably sports could come into the picture here and help them understand a lot of things such as success, failure, respect, team building, how to support each other, how to be together, aspects such as unity, inclusivity, equality. All these things can be beautifully taught at a very early age to these children. And if you really empower these children at an early age, you are almost empowering an entire generation. So keeping all this in mind, I decided why not merge my passion for sport and my passion for working in the social impact space together and start something of my own. So that's how Play and Shine was born when I was at the fag end of my chartered accountancy career. Initially, I had a lot of apprehensions. I thought probably people will not understand the concept of what a sports-based NGO is, or what we're even trying to create here, what social impact we're trying to deliver. So we started off as a social initiative. there were just a very few people, a very few beneficiaries in the beginning who we reached out to try and explain what our concept is, what is the work we do. And very luckily, a lot of people resonated well with this idea, which kind of gave me that conviction that, okay, fine, this is working well. And then we decided to scale up our operations, tried to align our objectives and the work we do with the Sustainable Development Goals set out in the United Nations 2030 agenda. And now it's been almost 3 years that we've been working at the intersection of sport for sustainability, and it's been a beautiful journey working on projects with the support of the Tata Sustainability Group, working on touch points with Teach for India, working with women in sport in India. So it's been a journey that has taught me an important life lessons. And I mean, even though I am professionally chartered accountant working in the consulting space, this has now indeed become a very integral part of my life.
Wow. I mean, there's always this scenario, when something hits you hard, like so hard that, that just drives you to fight for that particular issue which surrounds you. And I'm super glad that individuals like you are, bringing up these issues or putting an impact out there. So it's really inspiring. The next question is like, you told like it was kind of difficult to start, get into the space where people are not able to understand this particular initiative. So in the initial stage, how challenging was it, to start something on this level or scale?
So initially, making people understand the concept of sport for sustainability was the biggest challenge, because I mean, they hadn't come across someone before who was even using these two words in the same sentence. They meant sustainability, and generally when people talk about the word sustainability or use the word sustainability, they think about eco-friendly, green spaces, go green. That is what they generally think about, and they think it's all about planting trees and going plastic free. They don't understand that sustainability is even built on the social and the economical aspects of it, and it deals with the gender-based discrimination, the social and the regional-based discrimination, the pay divide, the economic disparity that's prevalent. They don't understand that all these aspects also come within the purview, within the umbrella of sustainability. So it all started off by helping them understand the definition of sustainability, what it really means, and to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, or to achieve this kind of sustainability, how sports can be brought into the picture to really achieve these goals, or to create a conducive environment that will foster that kind of individual or community development that will help us achieve these goals. So at the start, people felt that sport is all about playing games, fancy leagues, victories, medals, and awards, functions, and everything. They didn't understand that sport can even be played at a grassroots level for something other than the glamour aspect. Because for the kind of country we live in, sports has a very narrow definition. Generally, when we discuss about sport, 2-3 selected sports come to our mind. And then there are 2-3 leagues like the IPL or the Pro Kabaddi League or FIFA football, those kind of things come to our mind. We've never looked at sports beyond that glamour definition, or beyond that definition of being something more than a fantasy. So, kind of encouraging people or forcing them to rethink about sports beyond that kind of a vision or beyond that kind of a dimension, and then asking them to bring in the entire sustainability quotient and helping them understand how, through our work, through the programs we run, what we're trying to achieve was the biggest challenge.
Great. Like, I think through your initiative, this problem basically will be solved eventually. So great. So I saw your TED talk, and it was really inspiring. You have mentioned in your TED talk about the existence of all kinds of myths, basically the barriers that sort of restricts the children to reach that level in sports, even though they have that caliber in themselves. And one of them you mentioned, the factor that you mentioned was the lack of parents' support. So, on a personal level, I have seen some of my friends talking about like they want to play in nationals, but their parents are not that supportive enough because they want them to be academically strong instead of going to sports. So what exactly your take on this?
Yeah, a lot of parents feel that sport is some form of a distraction, or it's a waste of time, and it's not going to add any value to their child's career or to their child's goals or ambitions or dreams, which is something very wrong. They feel that the 2 or 3 hours that a child invests on sports is actually a dead investment, or it's a waste of time. But what they fail to see is through those 2 and 3 hours, the kind of values or the kind of habits that get inculcated in a child's life actually adds so much value to the entire academic quotient of it. Like I was always an academically strong student, but after I pursued sport, the kind of discipline that got inculcated in my life, the kind of focus, like my focus went up 2 times, the kind of attention to detail I started playing. I started understanding about things like time management, being disciplined, being focusing, being cutting off distractions, a lot of these things that were missing in my life, even though I was a sincere student at academics. And when all these things, all these habits got inculcated kind of through shooting, the kind of person I was actually got better, and it actually shaped my individuality or my personality in a much more profound manner. Like I learned how to cut off from distractions. I learned how to just focus on the task in hand. I learned how to be disciplined. Like even though I was a sincere student, I was someone who used to love to sleep. On weekends, I used to be in bed till 10, 11 in the morning, and then I used to wake up. I used to do my studying and everything. But suddenly shooting came into the picture, and I was someone who on her own started getting out of bed at 5 a.m. in the morning, started going for my jog, started understanding physical fitness is important, started understanding what I eat is important, and how, your body is a temple, and what you eat really makes a big difference of, how you function as a human being, or how your body functions and what kind of productivity you perform. So a lot of these aspects coming through sport that parents fail to see and understand. And even when you talk about the academic perspective, they feel that marks is all that matters. But right now, also, if you go out into the job market, or even if you apply to a lot of universities and business schools that are there, they have started paying a lot of heed, a lot of importance to all the other non-technical skills or the soft skills, etc., that an individual possesses, because technical skills are easily transferable. Like you can get a person on board and make him technically sound through a few training, but the soft skills are something that don't come easy and only come with a lot of experience and exposure in life. And a lot of these top companies and schools have started looking for these soft skills, and a lot of them are beautifully taught effortlessly through the medium of sport. So I think I really want parents to, understand the importance of this, understand the value that comes in when their child takes up sport. And what you said is totally right. When I was also at that intersection of my life where I had to make a choice between sports and academics, of course, my parents were very supportive, but a lot of people around me had their free opinions to give, that how this is probably the worst decision of my life, and it's going to destroy my career, and I shouldn't be doing this, and how my parents shouldn't be investing money in my sport, probably saving up for my marriage, or I should just be focusing on academics. And then there were things like, oh my God, you're going to be handling a 6.5 kg weapon for 10, 12 hours a day when you're training, and you'll get a pretty masculine physique, and who will marry you. Like I've heard all kinds of bullshit, and I'm just like, keep your opinions to yourself. I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yeah, actually, people should change their mindset. There's this particular mindset that they have, and they keep on, putting up their opinions.
Of course, and when you really cross the river and you're on the other side, and then those are the same people who come up to you and they're like, yeah, we always knew you would do it. And I'm like, I mean, had you just been this encouraging when I was really in the middle of the river trying to go with the current, it would have really helped.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great insight, like, definitely. So my next question, from the beginning of your journey, you have been in different careers. I mean, academically as a sports personality, then businesswoman, now sociopreneur till today. So there might be some kind of criticisms that you might have faced in your career, as a leader. So what were those, and how exactly you dealt with those on a personal level, or on a social level, or on a professional level?
So of course there was a lot of criticism that came my way, and I think the maximum of it came when I decided to step down from the Indian shooting team and wanted to really come back and start with my CA articleship and then get done with the CA final. So a lot of my friends felt it was a very stupid decision, because generally a normal student generally gives his CPT, IPCC, and then starts with the articleship in the second year of college. But because I was at the peak of my shooting career, had a lot of matches going on, and especially in the next 12 to 18 months, had a lot of milestone international competitions coming up, I decided that I'll not start my articleship till I don't finish graduation. So I decided let's just focus on shooting for now, focus on my graduation. Once graduation is done and I have that kind of free time that graduation was taking up, I can focus on my articleship and continue to play all the state and domestic matches of shooting that's going on. Of course, being in the Indian team was not going to be a feasible option, because that would mean staying in Delhi, attending all the camps, traveling across the world, which would just not fit in with the articleship. And I knew one thing, that I love shooting. I'm very passionate about it. but I didn't want to do it at the cost of any of my academic aspirations. So giving up CA because I wanted to be a shooter was just not seeming as an option that's there for me. I always felt that probably 3 years I can take a gap from the Indian team, go back, finish my chartered accountancy, and always make a comeback to shooting, because that's the beauty of shooting as a sport. There, it doesn't come with an age, or it doesn't come with an expiry date. We have people at the age of 50 also competing at the Olympics, and I just knew that it was in my blood by then. It was such an integral part of my life that even a 3 year gap from the Indian team would really do me no harm. I knew in like even after 3 years, I would find myself exactly where I've left it, with the same enthusiasm, with the same zeal. So that is a very tough decision I took. A lot of my friends at college felt that it was a very calculated risk because they were already 2 years ahead of me. And me starting with my articleship at this point and then getting into the CA final 2 years after them would not give me the comfort of not being able to crack it in the first attempt, because CA final has a lot of uncertainty. Some of the smartest or brightest students sometimes just don't end up cracking the exam, and they felt if that happens with me, it would be a lot of the crucial years of my career wasted. So they have their apprehensions. They felt that probably this is not something you should do now and just settle for some other alternative or just take up a job after graduation. My friends in the Indian team also felt that it was a very stupid decision at the peak of my career to be stepping down and to go back to just complete a course when there were other career opportunities available to me. Like I was getting a lot of job offers from the railways and a lot of other public sector companies. So there was a lot of flack coming in from both ends, but I just decided that I have decided to go back and complete the CA course, and I'm just going to do it. And even during the CA final, when things really get heated up and intense, and in 5 months you have your attempt coming up and nothing's working out, you not remembering what you've studied, and it's a very, very, it's probably the most intense phase of any student's career or any early professional's career. And even I felt the heat of it. Like no matter how academically bright or how strong-headed or committed I was to what I always do, I intensely felt the heat of it many times. That I felt that, will I even be able to do this? Was it the right decision? There was a lot of self-introspection going on, but still, I mean, I just decided to keep working hard, and I got through it. So that was one point of my career where, of course, a lot of criticism came my way. And secondly, even now, to a great extent, and in a very subtle manner though, because now I'm pretty much at the brighter side of things, or at the greener side of things, because I've finished my chartered accountancy, have a lot of other achievements in my arsenal already, plus working with a great organization. But still people come up to me and they're like, you have everything, you have a great degree, you have a great job, you have all other achievements. Then what is the need of really, running this entire social organization, burning yourself out, sacrificing all your weekends and social plans, even on your normal days, or putting in extra hours? Like, there's really no need. You've already accomplished so much. Probably you should just relax, chill, have a more, fulfilling life, go out, travel with your friends, do something of that sort. And I mean, I really don't understand, I mean, why that even comes from people, because I do something because I'm really passionate about it, and I see myself somewhere, 3 or 5 years down the line. So, of course, a lot of people who still have their care and concern to share for me, it just feels a little weirding or awkward to me, because I think what I'm doing is great, and I would still do it at the cost of sacrificing a few more weekends, a few more social plans, or a few more other sacrifices also that are coming my way. So these are two things where, I've constantly faced some kind of criticism always.
I feel from your talk, whatever you said now, like maintaining a balance and taking risk is actually beneficial. Like most of the people don't understand it. They like having a simple life is sort of, more greater than, and blaming people why they're doing it, for what
so
they're passionate about.
More than the risk, it's about pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, which is a tough thing. But once you're out of your comfort zone and you kind of realize how to deal with the pressure, to deal with the test, how to make sure you put your best foot ahead when there is uncertainty, when there are so many risks, when you don't know when this will work out or no. And the entire realization that, okay, fine, I'm going to try my best. Like failure is not going to demotivate me. Failure is not going to stop me. Even if I fail, I'll keep trying, because it will just mean I was closer than where I was yesterday. So I think once the entire realization comes, it's just like muscle memory to, just get out of your comfort zone and just do your things. Like for me, the most challenging thing for me as a kid was to get out of my comfort zone, which shooting forced me to do, because I was someone who's just 5 minutes away from school. So just going 5 minutes to school, having that entire bubble of my my family and 5, 6 close friends. I was living a very happy life. I was like, I have everything. I don't need anything more. And then suddenly shooting came up, started living away from home, started to travel alone. And when all that happened, initially it was a very tough decision. And I was like, how will I manage? But, putting yourself in one situation out of your comfort zone, then another one, and then you realize that, okay, fine, I can keep pushing myself. And, the more I push myself, the more I realize how much my potential is, or how much I can really cross my limits or boundaries. So I think that's just a process. And once it starts off, it's like a never ending thing. Then you just want to like every time challenge yourself that I think I can go further. I can go a little further. Maybe I can even try this. So it's actually an addiction after a point.
Yeah, I mean, pushing out yourself to that out of your comfort zone is really important, and
Yeah,
that's a great insight. So, as far as I have known you, like read about you, and sort of from different articles and in your interviews, and you are like really a more self-motivated person. But again, every person has their highs and lows in their life at each point. So, what is that formula for in yourself, like for addressing all those, self doubts, or sort of developing the mental toughness, which you can call it, to address it? Is it a sort of self talk or any specific habit or ritual you follow? What is it?
it's a lot of self talk actually. So I'm a sucker for journalizing. I love journalizing everything, keep writing things in my mind, my goals and ambitions and everything. And I think on days that are not too bright, or on days where I just feel exhausted and demotivated, I think the first thing that I do is I just decide to take some time off, because in such a situation, just to keep pushing yourself is like, it's not the worst thing. It's just going to be unproductive. You're just going to be there for the heck of it and not achieve anything out of it. So I just decide to always take some time off, probably read a book, watch something on TV, just catch up with my parents. In the non-COVID world, I would just go for shooting, because that's like the biggest stress buster for me. So decide to take some time off, and then sit and reflect upon, okay, what's going on in my mind? What is actually worrying me? Do I need to talk to a friend? Do I need to talk to my parents? Or do I just need to write it down and, let it pass? Because we're all humans. We're all going to have good days. We're going to have like super happy, enthusiastic days. And then there are days we're just going to feel exhausted and burned out. And it is very normal, especially the kind of uncertainty we're all living in. We're in the middle of a second wave, which is not really a wave. It's a tsunami. And there's so much happening around us. And in this situation, it takes a toll on your mental health, even if no matter how sound or how happy or how secure you are in your home, how ever safe your family is, just the fact that you get onto social media and read about, so many people not doing well, there's so many deaths happening, so many positive cases, and that takes a toll on your mental health. And you might wake up bright and happy, and then suddenly just one news can kind of turn your mood 360 degrees around for the rest of the day. So at such point of time, just ensuring you have great control over your thoughts, probably penning them down, or doing little things like a gratitude exercise or some form of meditation, or watching anything that makes you happy on a YouTube or on your phone. I mean, you should just consciously do such exercises, or consciously inculcate such habits as a part of your daily exercise, because only then you can ensure that you are somewhere in the right frame of mind always.
Yeah. I mean, taking a break is really essential in whatever we are doing, as you said. Yeah, definitely. Now, you have been into so many things during your school, college, college days until now. So there's this one question, like, how has been managing your relationships with, close ones, especially friends and family, been in terms of time commitments till date? And was there any kind of, or is there any kind of communication barrier or any effect in the relationship because of your career?
So, of course, I'm very bad when it comes to managing personal relationships. I'm just going to be very honest here. But I think the kind of people I'm really surrounded with are so understanding, especially my parents. Like my dad had a full-time job before he retired, and he used to travel a lot. Just used to be home for 3-4 days a month. So probably it didn't hit much. It didn't quite hit much the equation I had with him, or I still share with him, because we are used to, that kind of not being available or not being around each other. But of course, my mom, she's a homemaker, and as a kid, she was so used to having me around, because her life did and still does revolve to a great extent around me. Like, her day starts with, oh my God, I have to wake Priyal up. This is what I have to make for Priyal to eat. This is what Priyal has planned during the day. Priyal. So everything is to revolve around her. And now suddenly when I look at my entire schedule, there are just days where I have to like look at my schedule. I'm like, damn, I don't even have time to talk to her today, and that really makes me sad. And then I try and catch up with her end of the day or over lunch or over dinner. And I do not, of course, get the kind of time I used to get previously to spend with her when she used to accompany me to the shooting range. We used to travel together for shooting matches, and now like work and a lot of other things take up a huge space of my daily schedule. But of course, we are very vocal about it. There's a lot of transparent communication. Like if 2 or 3 days and we've not been able to talk openly or something of that sort, she just comes up to me and she's like, "Ha, beta, I mean, let's talk. What's going on in your mind? What's going on in your schedule? And just tell me what you're up to these days and everything." So I've always made sure that I've always been very approachable in that perspective. And every time, and she's also told me that, probably I'm just getting too carried away or too overwhelmed with what I have, and I'm ignoring them, or I'm not giving the kind of time I should be giving at home. She's pretty upfront and vocal about it. And I don't take that in a wrong sense. In fact, I take that in a very positive way, because that is also a responsibility that I look at. So as far as parents is concerned, it's been a very transparent communication both ways. And as far as friends are concerned, I think I've just found the best human beings on this planet. There are days I ignore them on WhatsApp. There are so many plans I cancel like back to back because I have a lot of other commitments. But like each one of them is super understanding. They're super supportive. And even if I cancel a plan, or even if I don't get back to them for days, they will still drop in their WhatsApp that, "How are you doing? I hope you're sleeping sufficiently. I hope you're having your meals on time. How is shooting going? Tell us. I mean, make sure you always make time for shooting." So these little gestures that they keep doing really help me in a great way to really understand that they're amazing human beings. And even I try and do what I can, make sure I don't ever miss any birthdays, make sure I'm always there for them when they really need me. And when time permits, even I try kind of, like ping them, get on calls with them. But of course, it's not easy. And I'm also not doing the best I can from what I can say. But I'm really trying to, and I mean to anyone else probably stuck in the same situation like me, that it's the kind of time we spend around our loved ones is highly underestimated. And I think the pandemic made me realize that these are things I should be valuing, because suddenly all the privileges I had, all to go around with my loved ones, just walk up to a friend's place and chill with him or her, or just go out for an outing, or just take my parents out for dinner, it's suddenly all gone. And for the longest time we took all these things for granted, and now that they're gone, we realize that these little moments are also something that have to be cherished.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's a great insight too. And like moving on, there's this quote I read a few days back. It says, "Learning is nowadays overrated. Curiosity is underrated." And that's what drives one individual like to bring the change in both impersonal and to the society. So how this curiosity as a factor is viewed by you in terms of your career?
I think that was the most important behavioral trait I had as a kid that really helped me explore all the opportunities I had before me, because I went to a school that had a plethora of opportunities available for the students. So there were a lot of sports, or a lot of academic opportunities, and I really wanted to try it out. I was into elocution, I was into debate, I was into all these forums and clubs, and I was a part of the throwball team, I was a part of the basketball team, shooting team, chess team. I really wanted to do it all because I was so curious about everything. And the mere fact that I started shooting was also about the curiosity. Ki, I want to use a gun. What is it like to fire a bullet? Will I be able to hit the target? It was that curiosity that literally pushed me from the classroom to, go home, tell my mom that this is a notice, this is a shooting club, this Saturday morning at 9 a.m. we have to be here, and I want to really go here. And on Saturday morning, waking up and dragging her out of her home and taking there and be like, "No, I want to try how to use a gun. It's so cool. I want to use a gun." It's just curiosity that has really brought me all the way. And I think that's a very important aspect. Like, not only in your early life, or not only as a student, even in a later stage, if you feel that, probably you want to try a career shift, you want to try working in a particular industrial domain, try a particular course. It is that curiosity in your mind that lingers, that do you think I'm a more a fit for this? Do you think I should try this out? It is a curiosity that really drives you to do things. So I think one should always be curious. Never underestimate yourself. Like if you're curious about something, don't underestimate yourself by saying that I'm probably not a fit for this. This is not something I should do, or probably this is not something I should venture into. Like, just try it. Like, your curiosity can lead you to do beautiful things, and sometimes it can be the game changer of your life, the way it was to me.
Yeah, I mean, trying is really important instead of overthinking what will happen after that, if what will be the result. So yeah, in the journey of your being in different industry, be it sports, business, academics, what are the major mistakes or failures you came across, and what do you think you should have done to overcome it? It's something which you want to share so that we as students can take back from this insight. I mean, talk.
So I think the biggest mistake I've always done is I have underestimated myself. Like in the initial part of my career, I used to hesitate in realizing the true potential I have. I always needed that extra push that you can do this, you can do that, and don't underestimate yourself. At least give it a try. And a lot of this, rather all of it, came from my mom, and I had to look up to her for conviction in the early days. Like I used to be curious about doing something. Like even when I started shooting, I wanted to just not end up playing for my school. I wanted to play for India, and I used to be like, okay, fine, I want to play for India. I want the tricolor on my shoulder, but I always felt that I probably don't have what it takes. And then it was always the extra push that came in from my mom that no, why not? You can do it. Just give it a try. You've got everything you need is already inside you. Just give it your best foot forward, and I'm sure you're going to be there. And it was only when my mom would bet on me, then I would get that kind of confidence to bet on myself and really go out there and do it. So I think that the initial point till where I wouldn't trust myself, or I highly underestimated myself, was probably the biggest mistake, because I know I lost a good 2 or 3 years in kind of underplaying myself. And in those 2 or 3 years, had I not, been so apprehensive or been so reserved about the extent to which I can go out there and achieve things, like life would have been very different. So, I mean, given the short career trajectory I've had till now, like from the day I started shooting to probably the day we're sitting and talking about this, even in those 10 years, those 2 or 3 years lost is a lot of time, because even in a year you can achieve so much. So if I had to go back to probably the 16-year-old me and relive this thing again, I would really stop underplaying myself. I would bet on myself a little more crazily, a little more heavily, and just trust the potential I've got and go out there and like try and achieve so much more than I did back then.
Great. You mentioned that your mom is one of the inspiration behind, your success.
Yeah.
So apart from that, since you are one of the inspiration for all of us sitting right now and watching it, I mean, where do you find inspiration from other things that around you in spite of your mother, like apart from your mother as a person, what kind of inspiration and motivation you find to do the thing or incredible work that you're doing currently?
So there's no one particular person I look up to or one particular thing I draw inspiration from, but it's a kind of thinking that I have got engineered within me, that I try and look at the good thing in everything, or I try and grasp the best thing out of anything. So even if it's a friend who's doing great in life, or any person I know who's doing great in life, I'll really want to take the best that person has to offer, the best key takeaway I can get out of that person's journey, or the kind of inspiration that person is given, and try and inculcate it in my life. And largely I've realized that there is no point in comparing yourself to anyone, or competing with anyone, because we all have our timelines, and what is there in your timeline at what point of time comes to you depend on how much you chase it or how much you work hard for it. So I always decide to compete with myself. I always make sure that I'm always on some form of consistent personal growth and self-development. And I kind of do conscious things to inculcate these little habits in my life, by which I can ensure that, okay, fine, I'm growing. At no point I'm just reaching a dead end and just being stuck there. And I just keep competing with myself. Like, Priyal, where were you exactly 1 month ago? What did you achieve in this last 1 month or in this last 1 week? How is that going to help you grow, or help you be where you see yourself in the next 3 or 5 years? So, I mean, I keep competing with myself, and I keep looking around for these little experiences or these little stories from which I can draw inspiration from. And it can be my mom, it can be my friends, or it can be something very random that I just read on LinkedIn. I mean, that's a very common thing I do. If I come across any story on LinkedIn where I see that, oh my God, this person's done such a cool thing, I just like draw inspiration from it. And I almost always even drop a note to that person that, hey, I just read this about you, and I find it really encouraging, and I find what you're doing is really great, and kudos to you. So I think that is the kind of encouragement we all should give each other and take from each other.
Great, awesome. Thank you for the insight. To be honest, like, I want to know about your, upcoming goals in life, a vision for your organization. if you want to share with all of us, like what are you like looking in your future?
Of course, so I have a lot of ambitious plans as far as Play and Shine organization is concerned, and uh, a lot of these plans were actually in my mind since the pre-COVID era. But now that we've got COVID, a lot of them have been delayed or just staggered in some form or the other. But I really seeing us grow as a large organization. The kind of response we've got, the kind of impact we've tried to create through what we're operating right now is crazy, and I really want to replicate that at a larger scale. Reach out to more children, reach out to more villages and tribal communities, and kind of democratize sports for everyone. I always said right from the start that my only vision is to ensure that every child has the equal right and opportunity to play sport. There are a lot of children out there who still not worn sports shoes, still not worn still not stepped on the sports field. At the same time, they do not know what sport is, and I think that means a huge portion, a huge chunk of their life, a huge opportunity that they've been deprived from, and something they can make a lot from. So I mean, I really want to ensure that I kind of can make this vision a reality, and in the next 5 or 6 years, my sole focus is going to be on that, reaching out to more beneficiaries, reaching out to more children, and introducing them to the beautiful world of sport.
It's like we have come to the end of the conversation as of now. So I have this last one question, like anything you want to share, any advice with the audience of our age watching this to take back from, the entire talk?
So I think the most important advice, like I said, somewhere I went wrong, and that is something I would not want anyone else to go wrong, is just bet on yourself. Trust me, that's the best thing that you can do for yourself. If you have a dream, you have a vision, you have something in your mind, and you even feel the 5% or the 6% conviction, or the 5% or the 6% assurance that probably I won this, so I can get there. Like, don't hesitate. That's literally all the assurance you need in the world. Bet on yourself, put yourself out there, out of your comfort zone, and just go get it. Like trust me, when you are out there in the heat, it is the pressure that brings out the best in you, and you will be surprised how you outperform more than what you thought you would deliver or what you thought you would expect out of yourself. So just bet on yourself and go after your dreams.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Priyal, for your valuable time. It's been a pleasure talking to you right now. And here we come to the end of the conversation with Ms. Priyal Keni. I hope you must have taken some strong insights from her journey. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for the upcoming episodes.
Thank you, Nupur. It was great being here. And I really wish great luck to you and your team. And what you're doing is simply amazing. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you so much.